Good evening and welcome inside the collective. It's the 30th of December, the final Tuesday of 2025, and we're back with you after a week off. My God, I mean, between the flu and travel schedules and the holidays, you name it, this trio's been beaten up, but we're coming in spirited. The Ravens have newfound life. This group has newfound life, and we're thrilled to be back. I'm Bobby Trossett, as always, joined alongside my co-hosts, Jeff Zaribek of The Athletic, Cole Jackson of Road Graders. We got a lot to discuss tonight, including what this entire thing is about, really not only the Ravens operation, but this episode tonight, Lamar Jackson's status, the narratives that seemingly have gone from local to national overnight. They've made waves. All of us are going to weigh in on that, including Jeff, from an insider perspective. What did we like? What did we dislike from week 17? How much of that can carry over into week 18 in this winner-take-all opportunity that now presents the Ravens, thanks to Cleveland's efforts and, of course, what the Ravens accomplished Saturday night in Green Bay, where Jeff traveled to. Lots to get to, including John Harbaugh's job security, when that conversation becomes at the forefront of everything a week from now. So let's dive right in. First and foremost, Jeff, the elephant in the room is, do you have a feel for Lamar's status coming up on Sunday night? It's the last game of the Week 18 slate, so if nothing else, he gets the most amount of time of anybody in the league to get himself right with that back contusion.
Yeah, I think he made good progress last week, so there's definitely optimism. I think it was a positive that he was able to travel to Green Bay and they allowed him to be on the sideline in that weather, be on his feet the whole game. That's all positive signs. It's all signs that he's recovering. He's taken huge steps. It wasn't, John Harbaugh said it. He was not in good shape early last week. And slowly but surely, he's sort of getting back into it. I don't know, like with Lamar, it's always so hard to predict. And the team is very cautious because we've had some of these, moments in the past where it looked like he was going to play and he just didn't make it to the finish line. So this is me talking. They haven't practiced yet. They'll be practicing tomorrow. So some of it's my speculation. I just think it's going to be hard to keep Lamar Jackson off the field on Sunday night. He's a competitor. He recognizes the opportunity at hand, I'm sure. As I said, he's feeling better. So we'll see. I think it would make a lot of people feel better if he's on the practice field tomorrow and he could get as close to a full week in practice as he can. But I do sense some optimism there from the Ravens. They won't know. They'll have to practice. They'll have to see how he bounces back, how he holds up through it. So it's impossible to make that call now. But, I think they're certainly hopeful that he'll be able to go Sunday.
I think everybody's going to have those Jeff Zaribek tweet notifications on high alert tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it.
Cole, with no Lamar out there on the field Saturday night, obviously they leaned heavily on a game plan surrounding Derrick Henry, 36 carries, a career high, a season high in overall rushing yards, multiple rushing touchdowns, hat trick to be exact. The guy was in rare form. What did you like from that game plan on Saturday night, and how much of that offensive attack would you like to see almost mirrored in a sense, regardless of who's under center for them coming up Sunday night?
I think the big thing is, you were going against a pretty depleted Green Bay Packers defensive line. And, that was, they kind of started the season by trading their best interior defensive lineman and one of their best run stoppers for Micah Parsons. And obviously Micah Parsons ends up getting hurt. So that right there is a big hit to your D-line. It's like us losing Matabike. You're losing one of your best players on that D-line. But they also had Devontae Wyatt out. So they just, this was one of the things, like that game plan, maybe not 36 carries, because it was a career high for Derrick Henry for a reason. But that game plan should have been what the game plan is, regardless of who the quarterback was. I truly believe that. I think when you see a defense, especially, the linebacker play out of Green Bay was some of the worst I've seen. That I don't know where why Quay Walker still sees the field, but like they abused him all night in the pass game and in the run game. So it's just one of those things where I would have hoped that was the game plan regardless. But they also deserve credit. Guys executed. We saw, offensive linemen moving guys 3 yards, which we just haven't seen a ton this year. So, I mean, it was one of those nice mergers of a good game plan with good execution. And that's what's been so inconsistent this year. I guess my overall take, though, is I just don't think it should have mattered who the quarterback was, whether or not that was your approach. I think you did see some very clear shifts. For example, we saw Tyler Huntley under center a lot in this game. And I think that's something that I would have liked to have seen a little bit earlier. I think that would have taken some of the pressure off Lamar Jackson. I think it would have given you a little bit more downhill ability in the run game. We saw, Derrick Henry taking a lot of hits behind the line of scrimmage earlier in the year and, going under center. What you can do with play action off of that, which the Ravens did a number of times. I think that would have been a huge value add, and it was a huge missed opportunity for Todd Monken early in this year. But I mean, credit Derrick Henry too. That was such a vintage Derrick Henry performance that, it didn't really matter where the gap was. He was manipulating gaps, which is, it's funny, right? For a guy that's the size that he is, he's a finesse runner. He's not really that kind of like Jerome Bettis, drop the shoulder, run through you. I mean, he can do it, but he's at his best when he gets a little bit of space and he's able to manipulate blockers and use his vision and his one cut ability. It's truly impressive for a guy his size. So overall, just really impressed with what they did out there. I think they saw the opportunity and they seized it. And that's something that we've been criticizing for 15 weeks was just their ability. Sometimes they'd have the right game plan, but guys wouldn't execute. Sometimes guys wouldn't execute when, you know what I mean? Like it was just one or the other all year, and it led to those overall inconsistencies. So that's kind of my takeaway.
Jeff,
yeah, go ahead.
Dive right in.
Yeah, I love the physicality. Like it's as simple as that. That was an old-time Ravens performance where we're just going to beat the shit out of the guy in front of us, and it doesn't really matter. And they just overmatched. I mean, I think Matt LaFleur said it himself at halftime. He said they big boyed us. And the Ravens haven't done that often enough this year. Like we've been talking about that. When are they going to play up to kind of their reputation as this physical, dominating team in the trenches? And they did that. And you kind of go back in the last 3 or 4 games, guys, and you never, I don't want this to come off like I'm cheerleading injuries and that's something you root for, but teams are just dropping like flies against the Ravens. It's been, what did the Packers lose 5 guys Sunday during the game to injuries? I think the week before the Patriots lost about 4, and most of them didn't play this past week. And of course, it didn't matter against the pathetic Jets, but they lost a lot of guys. And then the week before against the Steelers, there was several Steelers that got hurt in that game. Now, all right, maybe that's a little coincidental, but I have a hard time thinking it is, and you could just chalk that up. I think they're playing really physically. I mean, you see it even on them covering kickoffs and just doing different things. I think they're getting after people a little bit, and I think they certainly got after Green Bay. I think they got after New England for most of that game until they collapsed down the stretch, particularly offensively. And it was just, I think that's what people are waiting to see from these teams. And I think it was kind of exemplified, guys, by that late Derrick Henry touchdown run. Now, I think Green Bay had pretty much thrown in the towel at that point. But one of my favorite plays, not the run, was watch Devontae Walker, a wide receiver who goes about 198 pounds. Watch this right down there. Look at him driving Rashawn Gary like 5 yards down the field. He's giving up 80 pounds on Rashawn Gary, and he takes him puts them on skates and drives them down the field. That's a second-year receiver doing that to a guy that is an 8-9 sack guy in the NFL, has been playing the NFL for several years. Look at that. And that's been pointed out at meetings. You can bet Devontae Walker got a special shout out from his coaching staff. This is not a guy known for his blocking, and that just sort of exemplified the physical approach. Everybody was getting in the action on Sunday. Tight ends were blocking. Wide receivers were moving people. And obviously the offensive line probably had its finest 3 hours of this football season. So the physicality is what stood out that night and what's going to have to carry over if the Ravens are going to get out of Pittsburgh as AFC North champs.
And it's no different than the playoffs last year. When you go back and really dive into what happened in that game, Lamar Jackson, he had one of the highest completion yards over expectation of the season, which is really impressive and what should have been an MVP season last year. But they did their damage on the ground, and a lot of that was bullying the Pittsburgh Steelers front seven. You know, they had Patrick Queen in absolute hell in that game. So this is going to be one of those game plans that they're going to have to find a way to carry that over. They're going to have to find a way to, you know, replicate what they did in January last year against Pittsburgh when they did it in Baltimore.
Well, get a load of this. You're playing the comparison game between the two games. It is insane, statistically speaking, how much that's the case. And again, we're comparing the Packers game on Saturday night to the Steelers wild card round game that you just referenced. So not only were they both clean turnover games, meaning clean football offensively, 0 turnovers Saturday night, 0 turnovers in the wild card game. Tyler Huntley's offense, 10 for 14 on third down. I got the box score up from this past January. They were 10 for 15 on third down. Saturday night, they won the time of possession battle by over 20 minutes, over 19 minutes this past January. Like, it's actually crazy just how similar, Jeff, these game plans were. And to your point, that physicality that had been lacking, had been non-existent at times through the first 6 weeks of the season, maybe even at times during that 5-game win streak against lesser teams, has really started to come on when they've needed it the most down the stretch.
Yeah, and I think, look, there's been opportunities to lean on the run game more, and they haven't done it. And, call it coaching malpractice, call it whatever you want. I mean, the Patriots game with Henry off the field, some of that stands on, that stands on its own. There's definitely been instances, but I think I've gotten it from editors. I've gotten it from fans. My whole flight was Ravens fans coming back to Milwaukee. So you hear it from people. It's like, why don't they do this every week? Now, you have to earn your right to be able to play like that. And I don't think they earned the right to do that earlier in the year. Like, they just weren't picking up yards on first down, and they were making mistakes, setting themselves back with penalties, taking sacks, turning the ball over, missing gimmies to get 4 or 5 yards on first down. And you have to be in position to play like that. You have to be in second, and you have to stay ahead of the sticks. You have to be in second and shorts and third and shorts. And it's just not as easy as saying, oh, we should run Derrick Henry 30 plus times. You're not going to keep running into heavy boxes if it's second and long and third and long. And I don't think earlier this season, and I'm not defending him, but there's a couple games where not running more was egregious. That goes without saying. But there were times early season where they weren't on the field enough. They didn't run enough plays. And I mean, they were 28th in plays ran heading into that game in Green Bay. They're just not getting enough plays. And to be able to set the tone, hammer that run game, you need to stay ahead of the sticks. You need to keep drives moving. You need to stay ahead and not fall behind where you kind of have to abandon the run a little quicker. So, yeah, that recipe's great. But you earn your right to play like that by not taking penalties, by getting ahead early, by not taking negative plays. I mean, I think Tyler Huntley took 1 sack, and it was a 0-yard sack. And I think he put 1 ball in harm's way, and kind of they avoided the interception. You can't make negative plays, because to be able to play that way, you got to play clean football, get good yardage on first and second down, stay ahead of the sticks, and not shoot yourself in the foot. And too often for this season, they've been their own worst enemy, and they shot themselves in the foot and probably prevented themselves from staying on the field long enough and being that run heavy.
Yeah, and I'd push back a little bit on some of the play calling criticisms, and people using this as a like, why wasn't Todd Monken doing this all? I completely agree with the way you framed it. You go back, and we covered it well on this, on our show. I've been covering it on my channel all year. This O-line, you go back to Kansas City, you go back to Detroit. Derrick Henry's yards before contact was negative in those games. You can't, as an offensive coordinator, spam a run game when your running back's getting hit behind the line of scrimmage constantly. It's not, that's what's going to set you behind the sticks. So I love the way you put that. It really is, show that you can play that way. Like, the numbers are what the numbers are. Derrick Henry for 3 weeks in a row had a negative yards before contact. That is not a recipe for success in the run game. So how can you justify that to say that's looking at it and saying, let's do what's not working and let's keep doing it, even though it's not working? That's what puts you in 3rd and long. Now, and obviously, just to be clear, that doesn't apply to the Patriots game. Derrick Henry should put the ball.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Like that. Like, I'm not stupid. I'm talking about early in the year.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't run repeatedly and get 1 yard and be 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9. You just can't do it, and that's why I think the big key, and we'll go into it later, boys. But I think the big key is first downs in Pittsburgh. You know what they're going to try to take away. Can you still do it? Can you get 4 or 5 yards on first down and constantly be in 2nd and mediums and 3rd and shorts? And if you do it, and you can, they'll control that football game. But we all know what the Steelers are going to try to take away.
Yeah, guys, before we kind of take an outstretched view look at the week that was, a lot of narrative based storylines covering really a wide net within the social media sphere. Let's get a quick word from Sleeper. We'll address some of those. We'll get to super chats as they come in. And then obviously, as Jeff just alluded to, kind of sink our teeth closer into this rematch and the hat and t-shirt game that will be for all the marbles, and a chance to play in January, meaningfully in January. That is coming up on Sunday night in Pittsburgh.
Sleeper is the #1 fantasy sports app. It pays to know sports. Pick more or less on top players. Your first pick is on us, so start winning now. Play in Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, and 27 more states. Pick anytime across all sports, pregame or live. Over 10 million players are already on Sleeper. Make your picks count. Score up to 1,000 times your cash. Join today. Get up to $100 credit using the code HMA. Call your shot on Sleeper. Download now.
Well, thanks to Sleeper for the continued support of our program this season. You can use promo code HMA. That'll get you up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. You can see Sleeper's terms of use for details. It's currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. And thanks to them for powering this channel throughout this 25-26 season. Sammy left us off and got us started, I should say, in the super chat category. And Sammy writes, Jeff, what do you think of the Baltimore Suns report? Good segue to talk about Mike Preston's latest. Sarah is my co-host, but you guys are my co-hosts tonight on Tuesdays. Can you tell the medicine is really kicking in right now? We're all trying to get ourselves right now. But Sammy is referring to this. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up on the screen as well. Mike Preston, longtime Baltimore Sun columnist. Jeff had a number of things to say. And Sammy's end of the super chat here says, Spencer Schultz made it sound like those incidents were isolated and a while ago. And part of what Sammy wrote here, and I should say Mike wrote, is that the Ravens should look at possible trades which could net them 2 or 3 first-round picks. Jackson would love to play in Miami, where Tua is no longer the starter, or possibly Las Vegas, where Brady, a partial owner of the Raiders, has shown a fondness for him. Baltimore should also draft a young quarterback in the early rounds. This is just one snippet of a number of things that he talked about in this column, including perhaps the lack of professionalism from Lamar, or let's call it maturity, to use Mike's words, when it comes to meetings, tardiness, so on and so forth over the years. Jeff, everybody's been wondering your thoughts on something that literally made its rounds and took on a new life within the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a difficult spot. Mike's a good friend of mine and former colleague. But in general, I'm not a big one to denounce reports and to go after other reporters or to say why they should or shouldn't. each reporter has their own responsibility, and they decide what they deem newsworthy, what they have the sources to write, and all that. I'll just speak from what I think, what I know. I just don't think anything has changed really in terms of Lamar's behavior or his professionalism. I think he's been pretty consistent since he's been here. I don't think this is a new thing. I think this is exacerbated because they're losing, and he's frustrated because he's not able to play, and everyone's frustrated because they want their MVP on the field. And largely because of injuries, he has not been able to go out there and be that guy, and the team has suffered and hasn't played well. And I just think that this kind of thing, like, why did none of this come out? I can't speak for the timing of Mike writing it, but in general, like, Mike's been saying this for a couple of years now, guys. This isn't new. Like, as you said earlier at the start of our show, Bobby, it's gone national now, and I think that's why it's picked up steam a little. But Mike has questioned Lamar's work ethic before and willingness to play through injuries. That he's done that. So I don't, this is exasperated, as I said, by the timing. I guess the best way I could say to put it is, people want to know, is it true? Is it like, I'd say like probably early on in his career, they realized Lamar was different. He's very unique in what he does, how he carries himself. Obviously, he's a unique player. He's a unique personality. He does things his own way. And I think John Harbaugh early in his career realized that he had to accept some of that stuff, even if it's not exactly how he would want it. Right. So you can't fight Lamar on everything. You'd be butting heads with everything. So I think John Harbaugh decided what was to him negotiable and what wasn't. What does he absolutely have to have as Lamar? And he made sure Lamar knows those things. And then the other things, I would like that. But if he's not going to do it, I'm not going to fight him on everything. We have to meet in the middle. And I think John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson have been fine. I still think they're fine. I mean, do they agree on everything? No. Do there certain things where I'm sure Lamar wishes John would do things differently and John wishes Lamar would do things differently? Absolutely. That's kind of the case. He's a different guy. He's a different guy to coach, and he has his own way of doing things about it, and he's not one to kind of change. So, like the offseason's an example. Like, he wasn't in the building once this offseason. Not once. And, you're coming off a bad loss to Buffalo, and he's talking about taking the next step as a quarterback and as a team and needing to, put in the time and all that. And Lamar has a different view of what that means. And, yeah, they would love for him to be in the building throughout the offseason. But they know it's voluntary. That it's Lamar's decision, and they're not going to push him back on that. And I just think that this is the kind of story that comes out when the team's losing. I don't think really the relationship between Lamar is any different than it's been in previous years. And there's some pushback on both sides. But I don't think it's anything where they're going to be lining up trade suitors in the offseason where it's either John Harbaugh or Lamar Jackson, and they're going to have to decide one. I mean, nobody's defended Lamar more publicly than John Harbaugh, and I think that's pretty consistent in the building. I know Harbaugh haters will disagree and point out stuff, but you have hours upon hours of tape of John Harbaugh going to bat for Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh doing things with the football team that are seconded by Lamar Jackson that support him. So, as I said, I mean, I just don't think his behavior has changed in any way. There's sort of things that he does and he doesn't do. That's just how Lamar is. And when he's winning MVPs and when he's leading them to, 12 and 13 win regular seasons, nobody cares. They accept it because it's not like harmful stuff. It's just sort of things that Lamar chooses to go about things in a certain way. And they've learned to accept some of it and they go from there. So, I mean, I try to answer the question. fairly without kind of attacking the story, denouncing the story, or even defending the story. But I hope I did, in that way. But yeah, it's, none of that is really new. We've all heard these stories for years covering the team about different things. There's a certain criteria that we all live by, and what we're allowed to write in terms of what our sources, you need sources and different things, and what you can write and what's acceptable. And everybody decides what they do on that front. But yeah, I didn't think too much of it was entirely revelatory, because Mike has been saying it for a couple of years now, to be honest.
Yeah, it was in an article back in 2001 when this, which was ironically an injury-filled season, and a season
21, you mean, right, Cole?
2021, sorry, yeah.
Okay.
And a season that resulted in contract negotiations, which I thought was an interesting kind of rehash to do this, in another year where we're expecting, Lamar's been hurt, and then we're going to be seeing probably a contract extension or a decision around a contract extension. I think when you look at it, again, nothing that was in this article, except for the quote that's up on the screen, like the way it was written and the way it was reported on by the national media was as if these are facts, as in like Lamar would love to play in Miami. Lamar's from Miami. Lamar loves Miami. Like, I don't think he isn't publicly saying or telling anybody that he wants to go play in Miami right now. They're just making an obvious connection that he's from there. It's like, it's not the way it's written is like a fact. And the way the piece is written about Las Vegas, like, we're making a connection because Tom Brady has shown fondness of him. Like, it was written as if it was reporting on something, and then that was blown up by the national media. And it was like, well, Tom Brady's showing an interest in Lamar Jackson, and the Ravens are considering trading him. I think my biggest takeaway from this was my disappointment in the national media and how they responded to this story, because it just, there wasn't a single source in the article. You don't see this type of stuff in a lot of people's works, but you do see it in Mike's. So not a single source, and yet it's being reported on, suddenly all these big national media chains saying there's a rift between John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson, and John Harbaugh has grown tired of Lamar Jackson. Like, I just think it got so silly so quick. But that's what happens in the media, I guess. Disappointing to see, but it is what it is. Overall, we have heard some of these rumors, and I think Lamar Jackson is one of the most under the microscope athletes that I've ever had on a team that I cheer for, a team that I follow. And I think some of this, and Jeff, I'd actually be kind of curious in your thoughts on this, just in how you see some of the interactions. I wonder how much of this is exasperated by the fact that he doesn't have an agent to kind of be that filter. You know what I mean? Because these media guys, like I'm not a real media person, right? I'm just a fan with a YouTube channel. So I don't have to actually manage any relationships, but some people have to manage relationships with players, with agents, with all of these different people that are in the building. So how much do you think that is impacting how Lamar Jackson gets reported on?
Yeah, I mean, there's really the only one who's really out there speaking for Lamar Jackson is John Harbaugh, right? I mean, Lamar doesn't put a whole lot out there, and he doesn't, I don't, once in a while he'll clap back on social media, but when you don't have an agent speaking for you, and it's not just he doesn't have an agent, there's really no inner circle there. There's no quarterback coach. There's no family member. There's no college coach. Now, yeah, you once in a while you'll see those guys, and I've talked to them, quoted in an article about Lamar, but that's just, he doesn't really have people out there pushing his agenda. So you kind of don't get it from both sides, and you don't hear anything. So he's a unique person in how he handles stuff. He has a belief in himself that he knows what it takes to get ready for football games, and a belief in how he's done it, how he prepares, how he's gotten to this point. And, he's not – like the quintessential, you'll hear about all these quarterbacks like first in, last out, and was been there every day in the off season. he makes no apologies. That's not him. And he's not going to, he's very authentic in how he believes in what he does and how he does it. And he's not going to do things for eyewash because people want him to, or because the media would praise him. And he's not going to be one of these guys, and you'll see it from time to time, but he's not one of these guys that's going to be filming his workouts and having his trainer do elaborate interviews for him. It's just he has his own way of doing things, and that's kind of what I mean. Like he doesn't handle, he doesn't have an inner circle. Most quarterbacks have this support system that talks to trainers and individual quarterback coaches. Lamar doesn't have that. He had it, or a quarterback coach early in his career, but he's pretty much on his own and he does things his way. He doesn't feel it necessary to tell anybody what he's doing and why he's doing it. He doesn't really care what people think about it. So that's part of it. As I said, we could talk this whole show about it. It's almost easier to answer specific questions about Lamar rather than, because, it's disappointing, fellas, because anything you say about it, and I'm sure it'll happen tonight, there'll be some people saying, I'm taking shots at him, or you can't just analyze the guy and try to be fair. And it's an honor to be able to watch Lamar Jackson's career. He's spectacular, but there are also other things that sometimes when the team's not playing well, or if he's not having a great season, you can point out, and it doesn't mean you're a hater or you don't think he's good. It's just part of it. He plays the most pressure-packed position in the sport. They're under the quarterbacks are under a microscope, probably more than any players in the sport. And that leads to some of the conversation about him. I just wish it wasn't always interpreted as, oh, this guy's a Lamar defender and this guy's a Lamar hater. No, you can cover him fairly. It's difficult at times. Some of the takes are absolutely awful, like they're better off with Tyler Huntley. I've heard that one quite a few times. I mean, let's be serious here. It's just, and the whole thing is, guys, Lamar doesn't really care. I just don't think he cares about how he's perceived by outsiders. He cares about what his teammates think and what people in his really, really tight inner circle think. The rest of us really don't matter in his world.
I think that perfectly answers GW Wells' super chat there that came in as you were talking, Jeff. And, one of the things that you just said that made me think about how John Harbaugh handled one of his press conferences last week is that John really is the only public advocate, in a sense, for Lamar. And I think the way that he answered in detail, which is speaking of the word unique, is unique for John Harbaugh, as we all know on this panel tonight, for him to go into nitty-gritty detail about injuries. And he did that last week related to Lamar's back contusion, as if to say, get off him.
Exactly.
For the idea that he's not getting up for this game that we have to win. He cannot play. This is not a non-throwing hand fracture that Justin Herbert's dealing with. This is not something that you play through. And ultimately, that was my interpretation of it. And that came to my mind as you were just talking about how John's really been at the forefront of advocacy.
I mean, there may be one or two times since 18 when he came in the league. I don't ever remember Harbaugh criticizing Lamar publicly. Maybe I'm missing it. I think some of the
only time I can think of is the decision around an injury where he's kind of put it back on him and said it's on. It's Lamar's decision to practice, or it's Lamar. That's the only thing I can think of.
But that's really not that's not a criticism. That's honesty.
No,
Lamar makes these calls. Like he's earned the right.
Well, I mean, how many players did we heard Pat Ricard will play when Pat Ricard's ready? We've seen it with a number of players.
Ronnie a couple of years ago.
The Ronnie saga was nuts. Like it was. That's just been the way Lamar talks, or John Harbaugh talks about injuries. I think he just gets sick of everyone asking him every week, and he's like, we've cleared them, but they got to decide to play.
Yeah. It just, guys. I mean, you never want to say never. And I don't even necessarily disagree with the point. Like, we're coming to another contract here, and and there's still time to salvage it, but this has been a challenging season, and Harbaugh's name is in the news for potentially being on the hot seat. And it's just DaCosta's gotten criticism for some of his decisions, and it's kind of everybody. And when this stuff happens, it's tough. It creates tension and angst, and then your quarterback can't be himself because he's been banged up and he's not been on the field a whole lot. And yeah, I think it's been challenging for everyone. And now we're headed into another contract potential, so you never know what could happen. You never know what Lamar is going to say. But I would be, if there's any decision to make on him, it would have to be heavily like the only thing I could see them moving on if they're just absolutely floored by an offer. And I think that would be, as I said, I think I said to someone over the weekend, a gentleman named Chris who writes me and asks me questions. I think it would be last resort to move on from Lamar Jackson. I just don't see the organization doing that unless something happens that it becomes so painfully obvious that there's no way forward here. And I don't see that yet. I don't think things have been that bad this year. I just think people are frustrated. They're not playing well. He's been hurt. They've lost some games that they shouldn't have. Everybody's ass is sort of under the fire, and that creates some anxiety for an organization that is used to not underachieving.
Let's cook through some of these super chats before we talk about John Harbaugh, the play sheet caller, shall we? Mitty Rawl writes, do you think if things go bad, Ravens would trade Harbaugh instead of release?
I think you mean
fire, yeah.
Secondly, why is there a lack of play action under center with Lamar? Why don't you go ahead, Cole? It's been a minute since you've spoken here on the second part of this question.
On the second part, they've done it a little bit. I think you have to run from under center to be able to set up the play action with any sort of honesty. So I think, I kind of spoke about this earlier, and I did a film piece on it on Sunday, but I think, they had a very intentional difference in terms of the packages they were calling in this game. They played more under center, and it created those opportunities to, run the boot. They started first offensive play of the game was 21 personnel with a fullback in the backfield, and they got a 9-yard gain on a play action pass. So you have to line up consistently under center, and they just don't do it with Lamar. I think Todd Monken feels he's at his best in the pistol and the shotgun. There's definitely some things that you could disagree with there, and there's definitely some evidence to prove that, but that's mostly why I think.
Not a chance you read this with a little tip of the cap to Haloti. Says, any news on Broderick Washington's return, Jeff?
Well, he had surgery, so I think I forgot ankle or Achilles. I forgot which one. So I think that, Broderick's a great dude, but he may have played his last game as a Raven. I think he's one of the guys with the contracts that could be in trouble this offseason, where they may look to open up some cap space. And unfortunately for him, he just hasn't been healthy this year.
While we're on the topic of injuries, should we just kind of address that quickly? I mean, is Marlon going to be a decision have to be made on him? John kind of alluded to that yesterday.
I think the decision is whether he plays with a cast or without it. I don't think the decision is whether he plays. And okay. Harbaugh had mentioned, this was right around the time the cast was supposed to come off. I mean, we really saw him. What did he get stepped on by Tavius Robinson or something in the game? I think we saw him struggling there a little bit in terms of favoring that. But we'll see what he decides. But I don't see him as a candidate to miss this game. And the other guy, it doesn't sound like it was great. I actually asked Harbaugh about Justice Hill, and you get a game like this where pass protection and wanting to protect your quarterback on third downs kind of comes into play with Steelers' aggressive defense. But when Harbaugh basically says, I haven't gotten a heads up on that one yet, you'd think if he was close enough to play on Sunday, that would have already been in the works this week, and he would have known about that. But we'll see. Obviously neck injuries, as we've learned too often around these parts, are nothing to mess with.
And finally, and we talked about Lamar obviously at the top of the show, so he's the headliner under that category. And Sammy's gets us kind of fully caught up in the super chats, which is probably more of a big picture conversation to be had once the season's actually over. But Sammy writes, so you can see a scenario, and I think this was in follow up to what you were chatting about a couple minutes ago, Jeff. So you can see a scenario where John and Lamar stay.
Yeah, absolutely. The one result, unless they just turn this around, win the North, and then go on a run to the Super Bowl. But the one result that would shock me here is no change. And I'm not saying no change with the quarterback or head coach. It just seems like there will be, barring a unbelievable turnaround here, there will be some sort of significant change with the coaching staff. Whether it goes up to Harbaugh, we'll address that a little bit later. We'll see. But I don't think it's a situation that's become untenable where they just can't be in the same room. I don't get that feeling at all. I think everybody's tired of each other at this time of year when you have one of these disappointing seasons. But I don't think their relationship is poor by any stretch of the imagination where they have to choose one or the other.
Okay, that now brings us to I don't know. Does this fall under the narrative-based commentary related to John Harbaugh, the play caller, the play sheet gates?
Can I preface this really quick, Bobby? I want to be clear about this.
People were buzzing, Cole.
No one has been harder on John Harbaugh than I have. I think I've done 3 videos about how I want to fire him so far this year. So, I mean, like, barring a Super Bowl run, I would prefer to move on from John Harbaugh. I've made that very clear. All that said, this play sheet thing is the dumbest fucking thing, excuse my language, I have ever seen. That's not true. I've seen some dumb stuff. This is one of the dumbest things I have ever seen.
Hey, can we set it up in the way that he handled
John Harbaugh has never had a play sheet on this? Like, it's just dumb. Like, I don't know. I don't even know why this is a thing. Okay, let's go to the evidence since people are going to go, I don't ever see it.
Let's go chronologically and go back to Saturday night when Jonas Schaefer asked him a question related to this, and we'll kind of dive into it there.
I love Jonas, but I can't believe he asked him. I can't believe he asked him.
Jeff has uncovered some good evidence as well that we'll get to in just a second. So here is Saturday night post game before Cole crashes out even more so than he already has.
Get some fans took note of like the play sheet that you're holding. I don't know if you normally do that on a week-to-week basis, but did you have any more kind of oversight of the offense tonight?
Oh, no. The same play sheet I always have. Yeah.
All right. So, of course, this comes after what? Abandoning Derek with 12 minutes and 50 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Sunday Night Football, Patriots, Ravens, Baltimore loses, just epic collapse. And Jeff, here are 3 snippets that you've sent to us.
I have 9 of them if you want. I can post 9 of them.
We only use 3.
I have video evidence.
These are not, just to be clear, these are not from Saturday night in Green Bay, correct?
Yeah. No, sure don't look it. Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, that's I know.
Are you sure that's not the menu for the after game dinner?
I know we're all looking for reasons to prove our I should say this. I think we're all looking for reasons to prove John Harbaugh isn't fit for this job. And I don't mean we're all, but I mean the people who are focused on such matters as call sheets. But yeah, there is nothing to see there. You could find many more pictures just like this. He is involved. Trust me.
Cole, do you have anything else to get off your chest on this topic?
Just fucking let's just use the right reasoning. Like, come on. Like, this was that's my thing, right? Like, again, I'm one of his biggest critics. Oh, fuck. One of his biggest critics. And I just would never go there. Like, it was that dumb. So anyway, let's cut that out. Let's talk about the right reasons. Because there's plenty there. That just wasn't one of them.
All right, let me talk about this then to set us up for Sunday night, because it has been night and day for Aaron Rodgers when he does not have his far and away number 1 target, DK Metcalf, and that is reality for the Steelers in a must-win moment for them coming up on Sunday night. With DK on the field, Aaron completes 67.2% of his passes. He has a 7.1 yards per attempt mark. His passer rating is 99.9. Without DK, all 3 of those categories plummet and plummet significantly. Jeff, what are you expecting in terms of Pittsburgh's ability or inability to move the ball on what's been really a susceptible Ravens defense through the air?
Yeah, the thing that stuck out to me when they played 4 weeks ago, how little fear they had of the Ravens cornerbacks. They went right after them. Big play, first play of the game. Okay, maybe Metcalf got away with a push off on Humphrey, but they were not scared at all. Their entire game plan was to try to create chunk plays and go right after those guys. And they did it and got whatever they wanted. And well, until the fourth quarter where, that seemed like they got a little conservative and the Ravens defense kind of got a couple stops. But the big thing is, can those guys win, when you don't have Metcalf and we'll see about the other guy, the slot receiver, Calvin Austin, see if he's able to play. He missed the Browns game too, but yeah, it's a different offense. It's a totally different offense. And look, at times I've been a little, understanding of the Ravens, some of their secondary issues, because I just think any secondary is going to struggle to keep up if they're not getting a pass rush and you're not creating a steady pass rush. And pretty much every quarterback worth anything in the league, if he has time, no matter who he's playing against, he's going to be able to find somebody open. And so I've understood that, but that effort the other night was not good. And Nate Wiggins and Marlin, and it was bad. And I think if they're not able to answer the bell against the receiving group that they're playing against this week, it's just like, wow, they need a much better performance. They just can't. The Packers receiver group is a lot better than what they're going to see this week. And you can't be getting beat repeatedly by, Scotty Miller and Marcus Valdez-Scantling and Austin. And come on, like they need to win these matchups. They need to force the Packers to think they have to run the ball to win the game and take away some of these chunk plays. I mean, it was bad in Green Bay on Sunday.
Cole, I want you to expand on this tweet that we have up on the screen. But first, listen to John Harbaugh with some pointed criticism here towards his defense and including the call on that Tampa 2 from his second-year play caller, Zach Gore.
Post-game, you did acknowledge kind of the shock of how the defense played. Now, having reviewed the tape, what did you make of that? I mean, you talked about big plays. Was there a theme? Was there something that really jumped out as far as why that was happening?
Yeah, there was. I mean, it was just technique. It was technique in the back end, really, corner position, and it wasn't anything. It wasn't really across the board. It wasn't any kind of miscommunications or anything like that. We played things right. We just didn't play them. We didn't play the pass game well from a coverage standpoint in the back end. It was really the outside lane throws that you saw made. They were just too easy. We didn't cover them well. And then quarterback getting out of the pocket. We got him a few times, but he got out a few times. He's elusive, but a couple of those were more our fault. Just our rush lanes weren't as good as they needed to be. And sometimes it was getting him down, too. He got out of our grasp once or twice. So those are the two things that were very much pinpointed to the problem in terms of the yards that were given up. We had one, I'll say this, we had one seam route. The first touchdown was a seam route against cover 2. That we didn't play that right or well, and it, honestly too, it wasn't a great call against that route. So I'd say those were the three things.
And that was the Christian Watson touchdown, of course, the second play from Green Bay, offensively speaking, after the Ravens marched down the field in their opening drive. But Cole, the first part of that, from a technique perspective, does that match up with what you saw on tape?
I think what happened, you got to go back to that first drive. They had 2 completions for 30 plus that went for that touchdown, right? So Nate Wiggins got beat in cover 3 to Romeo Doubs, and then Christian Watson caught that against cover 2, and he's bang on. Like Kyle Hamilton fucked up. The Packers were in empty. When you're in empty, the two, like Kyle Hamilton's playing that away from the trip. So they had trips on the left side of their formation, and you can see Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith carried the seam, And on the opposite side, Kyle Hamilton has to do the same thing, and Kyle didn't do it. When you're in cover 2 against an empty backfield or a five receiver spread, they did have 2 tight ends, but a 5 pass catcher spread, the safeties are naturally going to play more wide to cover out. So you got to carry the seam. So anyway, he's bang on with that. But I think one thing that's being missed in this is I do think there were obvious technique issues. If I'm doing a piece on Nate Wiggins tomorrow, and there's the way he was playing the stems of routes was not what you come to expect from Nate Wiggins. But I think there's a fundamental coaching piece within this that I don't think you can ignore. And what happened was, in my opinion, the Packers beat them deep early in that game, and then you saw this overcorrect from the Ravens. Every single zone coverage drop after that was deep. They were dropping their safeties and their corners, whether it was cover 3, cover 6, way deeper than they normally do. They were dropping the second level, whether it was, 5 across, 4 across, whatever, depending on the coverage, they were dropping them way deeper, which was creating all this underneath stuff. And so I don't think Nate Wiggins, who had a particularly difficult game, I don't think he thrives in that off-man coverage role. And so I think this is a situation where, Nate Wiggins needs to own some of this. I'm not completely exculping him from any sort of blame, but I think when you're constantly asking him to play off man, that's not what he does well. He does his best when he lines up as press. It's not when he's pressing, because he's not the most physical guy, but when he can soft shoe release off of that coverage alignment and run with the receiver, he does a lot better of mirroring the stem of the routes. When he plays more off man and he's reacting, I think he struggles more. And I think that's exactly what you saw. So as much as I think you can say, yeah, there's some technique issues, sure. But I think the coaching staff, with this ultra conservative approach of not wanting to get beat deep, I think that's having a really tough effect on these corners. I think Wiggins play much better when they're lined up closer to the line of scrimmage. And as much as Marlon Humphrey has struggled, I think Marlon Humphrey does better in the same type of more physical role, specifically in the slot. So I think the best way I'd like to see the secondary come out in this game is to get Marlon back in the slot a little bit more full time, and to get a Awuzie on the field on the boundary across from Wiggins a little bit more. And I think part of that, and Jeff, you can maybe expand on this, is I think they're just trying to manage. A lot of people are basically asking, why isn't Awuzie playing more?
Yeah.
I think they're just worried about managing the
he's been banged up. Yeah, he's
exactly.
been banged up.
So that's why it is. I think Awuzie has been their most consistent performing corner. And I think and we talked about this coming into it when they had Jair Alexander and Awuzie. They brought in 2 guys hoping to deploy one because of both having the injury risk. So I think that's really going to play a role there. So I mean, I know my answer almost sounds like a cop-out, and I don't intend it to be. I just think it's a bit of both. I think Zach Orr isn't putting Nate Wiggins specifically in a position to succeed, but I think Nate Wiggins also needs to do some little things a little bit differently, and that's what John's referring to. So, I mean, again, I'm really not trying to cop out, but I do think it's a little bit of both mixed in here.
And Jeff, you got the snap count as you always do the morning after. I mean, Cheeto logged just 26 snaps. That's 55% of the share. We know that it was just a couple weeks ago, as you alluded to, that on the sideline, that encounter with a netting or something along those lines on the sideline in Cincinnati, right? Kind of caught his foot there. Now, on the other side of the ball, though, this is interesting. When you go back to earlier this month, when these two teams met for the first time, there was no Derek Harmon. He will be out there. We don't know what TJ Watt's level, what his status is, but I just got finished right before the collective began tonight listening to Mike Tomlin's press conference from earlier, and he has him in an optimistic category. I have no idea what that means. They want him with a full week of practice, given the sensitivity of that lung procedure that he literally just underwent a couple weeks ago. But on a day where they had a plan for Derek, I'll go back to it earlier this month, 3.8 yards per carry. They gave it to Derek, 25 carries for 94 yards. The day that if we remember that game, obviously there was a lot of fluky officiating type stuff that happened in that helped decide it. But Keaton had 12.7 per carry that day with no Derek Harmon. So going to be very curious to see just how formidable this Steelers defense is, and if they have a plan for what the Ravens want to do, just as they did successfully in the wild card round.
Yeah, I'd expect. I don't have any inside information in Pittsburgh. I'm not claiming to, but Watt was on the practice field last week, and people were writing that he's going to play in their first must-win game, and their first must-win game arrives Sunday. And for Tomlin to say what he said, I think you'd have to conclude it's leaning in the direction for him to play. And Harmon's an interesting guy because I think they've been pretty upfront that they drafted him in the first round, largely in response to what happened in those final 2 games against the Ravens last year, when the Ravens just ran it down their throats, and they didn't want that to happen again. They were very Terrell Austin, defensive coordinator, another former Ravens assistant. He was very honest that we have a Ravens run game problem, and we went out to get Derek Harmon to go out and fix it. So yeah, it's not to say they can't control the game with the running game, and they shouldn't give Henry a ton of carries and all that. But I would be surprised if it comes anywhere close as easily as it did in Green Bay on Saturday night. I think they are going to have to create plays down the field to win this game too. I don't think they're just going to be able to rely on the run game. The Steelers can create negative plays, and when you create negative plays, it's harder to stick to that run game when you're second and long and third and long, as we were talking about earlier. So they're going to have to be better in every aspect. It's not just a matter of, okay, we're going to run Derrick Henry down their throats. Okay, the Steelers know they're going to try to do that. And they're also going to suspect, if it's Lamar Jackson playing, that Lamar is not going to be very aggressive with his legs because he's obviously not 100% and how much time he's missed. And if you watch tape on Lamar all year, he's not been aggressive with his legs because of the injuries. So they're going to key on Derrick Henry. And I think they're better suited to combat the Ravens than certainly what we saw on Saturday night.
If you don't think that box is going to be stacked, you're out of your mind. And that's what I was trying to allude to earlier. Like, I get it's easy to just say run the ball, but there is an ebb and flow and feeling out what the defense is doing and reacting to it. And again, the Ravens have been wrong in the past. They were wrong against New England in the last 12 minutes of the fourth quarter. Like, I'm not denying that, but I'm just saying, specifically Pittsburgh, who has played their run game really well. And I mean, one thing that they did specifically in the first matchup is when the Ravens were running zone and they were leaving the backside edge unblocked, they were just down the line of scrimmage. And if you go back to last year, they did not do that because of the threat of Lamar Jackson's legs on any sort of keeper. Even a inside zone handoff, the way Lamar would handle it out of pistol, they have to read that differently because it can be an option, a zone option at any point. So I think that's a huge piece. And if Lamar is playing, would love for the first play of the game to be a zone option. I think you will see that edge player on the read side will charge the running back, and I bet Lamar goes for 10 plus on the first play of the game.
I mean,
I'll call Todd. I'll let him know.
Didn't TJ Watt make 2 tackles for loss doing exactly that in the first series?
Yeah.
In that game.
You know what was interesting, Jeff? If you go back and you watch the way they ran zone, I highlighted this in my video on Sunday. I did that video. They ran inside zone multiple times against Green Bay with a tight end on the weak side or the backside away from where the ball was going, and they blocked that backside edge. So it was one of those things where I remember looking and saying, okay, I think they picked up on something. And when you look at Green Bay's defense, weak defensive tackles, you don't need as much help there, but they still had guys like Rashawn Gary who are really good football players. So I think also a little bit of optimism that, Todd Monken had a little bit of an answer to something that they struggled with against that Pittsburgh look.
Boy, you talk about limping into the postseason too, that they've already clinched thanks to Detroit. Right, but the Packers could go into the wild card round having lost 4 straight games. That's a really
I selfishly just want to see Chicago beat the wheels off them. I feel bad for that Bears fan base, and they remind me so much. In the 2000s of the Ravens, they had the all-world middle linebacker, no quarterback. There were so many similarities between Chicago and Baltimore.
So
I'd
you're
love to
saying
see
they
them.
remind you of a younger you? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, before the gray hairs.
All right, fellas. Any last word? You guys good to go?
Yeah, I mean, look, we kind of pitched talking about John Harbaugh's job security, and I don't want to. Yeah, like we don't need to go into it too deep because I think the reality, guys, is we really don't know exactly what Steve Bisciotti is thinking. And I forgot if it was Sammy or someone else asked, like, could they trade him? And look, a couple agents have even brought that up to me. Like, he's going to be if he's available, he's suddenly the belle of the ball. And he's suddenly the top candidate. And if there's a team out there that doesn't want to get in a bidding war for John Harbaugh and say, hey, we'll give you a second round pick for him. Like, but again, so much would have to happen for that even to come into play. Like, you're not going to
pick.
You're not going to trade him to a place where John doesn't want to go, and you'd have to agree to a contract. So yeah, like I wouldn't rule it out totally, but it could be an option, and I just think it'll be interesting because I think it's a legitimate question about his future. And I don't think we've said that too often. Like, I think fans have thought it was at different points over the years, but it really was no decision to make in the front office's eyes. And we'll know real quick if they feel like it's a decision to make. I just think. But I do think it will be played out in the next 72 hours, however long before the game. There will be people saying whoever wins or whoever loses is going to get fired. And I'm not buying that in terms of – I just think that you have two stable organizations who think at the big picture. And I just have a hard time believing after 19 years for Tomlin and 18 years for John Harbaugh, one game is going to decide whether they keep their job. That doesn't sound like the way these two teams do business. So, and plus if you're okay, if you say if they win and get to the playoffs, you keep them. If the Ravens lose in the first round, does that make anybody feel any better about the situation? If they lose again in the divisional round, does that make anybody feel any better about it? So I just, I would have to think Bisciotti by now has a good idea on what he's going to do, if anything. It may be nothing. It may be, I feel like changes need to be made below John, but he's still the best football coach for our team. So I don't think this game will necessarily be a referendum on it. I will say it would not be good for have a fourth quarter meltdown or to forget Derrick Henry's on your team or to make some curious coaching decision or coaching oversight in this game. But overall, I think that storyline will be the most overplayed storyline of the week. And I'm not saying that either one of these guys, I'm not, forget Mike Tomlin. I let people in Pittsburgh cover that. But just for a Harbaugh perspective, I'm not even saying he's definitely going to be back. I'm just saying I don't think one game is going to make that decision for owner Steve Bisciotti. I would think he has a good idea what way he's going to go, if anything, and this one game won't have a tremendous influence on his decision.
Yeah, I think one thing you hit on that really needs to be highlighted is this will be a Steve Bisciotti decision. A lot of people talk about Eric and John and being neighbors, and I that doesn't mean shit. This is going to be a decision made by Steve Bisciotti, and I kind of let it when I got a little heated earlier, but I'm completely with you, Jeff. Like if they get into the playoffs and lose to Houston, it doesn't really change where I'm at, I don't know why it would change. You don't if you're going to end a relationship that's almost 20
2
years?
decades.
Yeah. Like, I don't think you end
18.
that off of one game. I think they probably know what they're going to do, and there's a bit of a range of outcome. And keep in mind, some of this might be John Harbaugh's decision as well.
Cole, I'm glad you just said that. I was going to add that. Don't discount the fact that he has a significant say in this. And there will be teams willing to offer him a blank check and perhaps personnel power. He's seen what a new lease on life and a new second chance has done for Andy Reid, his mentor, his buddy, a guy he still talks to. John very much looks at the big picture on stuff like that. So don't discount that he may have a call on this. And you know, he'll be introspective enough to know whether he thinks his voice has gotten stale in there and whether he thinks he's gone as far as he can go as the head coach. So yeah, it's a complicated thing, guys. None of the results would really surprise me. As I said, the only thing that would surprise me if there's no changes whatsoever and they just run it back with all the principal kind of guys in place.
Yeah. And as you heard yesterday, Jeff, for the second time in as many weeks, he is fielding at least a question about this job security. So it's probably not
let's
going
give him
away.
credit, Bobby. He's answered those pretty well. Like, he has not like bristled. And I know all of us, well, you know, we've all gotten snapped. You know, he snapped at people before, and a lot of people get kind of, you know, aggravated about how he answers certain questions. But he's been very open to listening to those questions and fair in responding. And
yeah,
I had a couple messages even from fans who are not Harbaugh guys telling me they are surprised how expansive and willing to field those questions he'd be, because he could easily say, we're not thinking about that, next question. And he really hasn't. He's fielded those questions fairly.
I agree. First it was Bo, right, a week or two ago, and then Brian came back and followed through on Monday, and I think both produced very fair, thoughtful answers to your point there from Harbaugh. So who knows? Maybe that will dominate.
I thought Bo was doing his. Is he still doing his farewell?
Oh yeah. Bo. Hey, Bo was in Green Bay, and I'm not going to take credit for this. This was Brian Wacker's comment. We called it the penultimate ride. The Green Bay game was Bo's penultimate ride, like, because you know he wants to be treated like Ray Lewis with this last ride thing, and at the time we didn't know if they were going to have more than one game left. So Bo was at Lambeau, man. He's eating this up. Of course he wasn't at the Ravens facility on Monday because that's Bo. I think he's on the 2-3 day work week plan. But he's gonna enjoy every last chance he gets. Let me tell you.
Oh God, there's no farewell tour on your watch. No farewell tour on your watch. Oh God, gentlemen, great catching back up with you. Who knows? Maybe job security will be the entire dialogue a week from tonight when we are back inside the collective to talk about whatever takes place on Sunday night in Pittsburgh. So for Cole, Jeff, I'm Bobby signing off from this final edition of the 2025 year. Thank you guys, as always, for dropping by. If you could on the way out, like the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can be notified of when we're dropping our next live stream, which is coming up 1 week from tonight. Happy New Year to everybody. We'll catch up with you then, and enjoy Sunday Night Football.